Hey gorgeous soul, I'm Zoe and welcome to the Oasis State podcast, a space where we decode life's mysteries and embrace the what the fuck moments that make it magical. Let this podcast be your trusted companion on your wild journey of transformation, healing and soul expansion. Together, we'll dive deep, celebrate our technicolor existence and turn life's chaos into pure magic. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back to another episode of the Oasis State podcast. Okay, I did not think when I woke up this morning that I would be pressing play and recording a podcast about this particular topic, but I have been given many signs, and the strength of the signs have been increasing from the universe to shine a direct light on my relationship with grief and my grief journey since my dad passed away just over 2 years ago. And I definitely haven't been ignorant to the fact that I use this podcast to share pretty much all of my emotional journeys, and I just am so passionate about moving through pain and lessons in my life and transmuting them into clarity and power, and then jumping on here and sharing for anyone that is going through a similar lesson or journey, sharing how I went from point A to point B, or to the best of my ability, understanding how I went from point A to point B, because it's not fun doing it by yourself, and it's really disorientating and confusing. So I've always had the intention with this podcast to be a companion and some form of a guide for anyone else going through similar lessons. And like I said, I share all of my lessons on here pretty much, but I haven't ignored it. I haven't ignored the fact that for just over 2 years, I haven't actually spoken directly about my grief journey. And it's something I want to talk about. So this all happened because this morning my friend Esther, who also has a beautiful, amazing podcast, messaged me because one of her faithful listeners by the name of Alyssa messaged her mentioning that she's also navigating some grief and the loss of a parent, and was asking Esther if she had any podcast episodes about that. And Esther has a lot of experience with grief, but I'm grateful that she could acknowledge that losing a parent is actually a whole different kettle of fish when it comes to grief. And she really amazingly thought of me to maybe guide Alyssa and anyone else on their grief journey, especially grieving a parent. And it's without Esther knowing, it's actually something that's like invitations to do this have been getting louder and louder for me lately. And I'll jump on and, like I said, talk about all these other things that are going on. And I have spoken about my grief on other episodes, but I've never directly spoken about the journey, like, step 1, step 2, step 3. Not that there's steps to grief, but just basically telling my story. And I woke up this morning, got Esther's message, was really grateful that she thought of me. So if you're listening, Alyssa, I really hope that this can support you through such a wild time. It's the wildest journey. And there's multiple benefits of me recording this. As you can tell, I'm a bit emotional, but I'm fucking ready. I'm ready to talk about this. And it's wild. Like, grief is just the most beautiful journey that you can go on. And anyone that's listening that is navigating grief, you might not call it beautiful, but it's one of the biggest spiritual initiations that we can go through. And you don't have to be a spiritual person to be initiated by the grief. Like, what I mean by the spiritual journey or the spiritual initiation that comes from grief is just, it totally shapes and changes your perception of life and death, because ultimately death is the thing that gives life meaning, and until we've dealt with grief, and especially losing a parent, we don't see it that clearly. Well, in my experience, I did not see it that clearly. And also when you lose a parent, once you've moved through the initial layers of grief, I will get through this. You're invited to learn how to reparent yourself. Now that you don't have one or maybe both of your parents' earth side with you, it's an invitation to learn how to reparent yourself. And I think the biggest differentiation between grieving another loved one, which like it's not a competition, there's not levels to it, but there's just this like different, it's a whole different experience, a whole different spiritual initiation from losing a parent, is when you lose that parent, you instantly go back to being that little girl or that little boy, and it feels like even though when you lose them as an adult or a teenager or whatever phase of life that you've lost them in, it feels like you're that little girl or that little boy losing them. And I think that's the difference. So, excuse me. We're going to get through this. I hope you don't mind the emotion, but it's fucking real, you know? And, I've been actually so good on my grief journey lately. It's been like 2 years now. And I think personally, when you get through, sorry, the sniffles, personally, when you get through the initial firsts, you can sort of like find your rhythm. And I think like one of the biggest disclaimers I'm going to give about the grief journey is like, there's no how to. I'm not recording this podcast episode like this is the best way to get through grief, because there's no good way. It is meant to be debilitating. It is meant to be a disorientating process, because it's fucking hell. So I didn't think I'd get this emotional, but I want to keep going. Get this out there, because I think when you're going through grief, all you want is just to be recognized, to not feel so alone. It's like such a confusing journey, and you just feel grief is a really isolating journey. Like everyone's around you and everyone is telling you that they love you and they're here to support you, but it's like you've got this 5 meter thick wall of glass around you and everyone else all of a sudden, and you can hear them and you're trying to feel them, but you feel so fucking alone. So I think that's why recording this is so emotional, because I just want to offer anyone that's going through grief some form of companionship and some form of guidance and some form of recognition, because I'm there with you guys, if you can't tell. Even 2 years on, and I'm not saying that like, oh, you know, get ready, it never gets better. It's so beautiful. Like, I've really been on such a beautiful journey with it, but I think that's why I haven't wanted to record this for so long, because I'm just like remembering, excuse me. I'm remembering those versions of me that completely were so broken and so alone and so confused. And I want, like, this version of me right now is recording this for her those years ago, and for the little version of Zoz that lost her dad. And if you're listening, I don't know if it's your mum or your dad that you've lost, but losing a parent is so terrifying. And I just want you to know, sorry, that I see you and that I feel you. And I really hope you're recording this through like through this voice, and sniffling and stuff isn't a problem, because I don't know if I'll be able to do this without being emotional. But yeah, I think like regardless of, you know, obviously talking about the grief and like missing your parent, I think I'm so emotional because I'm thinking back to those versions, and like I've come so far, and there's no destination with grief. But that's again not to say it in a limiting, like, you know, like not defensive isn't not the right word, but like a defeated way. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll just get these tears out at the start, but I'm sorry if I'm sniffling and stuff like that. But yeah. Hopefully you can just move through all of that and just listen to the message. There's no destination. It's a full journey. And I lost my dad 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago. It was September. So now we're recording this in December of 2024, and I lost Dad in September of 2022. So yeah, I've actually been really good with it and just feeling really lighthearted with it. And I'm a very spiritually tapped in person and feel like I'm quite intuitive and or psychic. So I very much enjoy knowing that, you know, my dad is still out there, and I can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it's just been like this playful, lighthearted sort of journey with grief. So if you're listening, just thinking like, holy shit, how do I get out of this? Just know that there are really beautiful seasons of lightness and of normalcy, and you do find your true north again. And but weirdly enough, like I said, I've been getting a lot of signs to record this podcast or sort of like come full circle with my grief journey. And it was funny enough, I was actually watching Gilmore Girls, and I'm sorry to give a spoiler if you haven't watched it, but I was watching Gilmore Girls a few days ago, and Lorelai actually loses her dad in that series. And there's a scene where she calls up her mum and retells this whole story of like one of her best memories with her dad. And I lost it. I was inconsolable. And that's the grief journey for you. Like, you cannot tell when you're going to fall apart, but that's okay. It's not about trying to control the emotions and the experience. It's almost like you've got to have this lightheartedness to it. And I'm like, it was just a Sunday afternoon. I think it was rainy or, you know, windy or whatever. And I was just having like this cute little afternoon watching Gilmore Girls. And then Lorelai, the main character, is like just blubbering on the phone talking about one of her favorite memories with her dad. And I was just like, nah, like I cannot handle this. And when those triggers isn't the right word, and when you're sort of activated and like that grief is sort of brought more to the surface again, it's such a beautiful opportunity to just transmute some more emotions. So that's what I mean by the grief journey is so spiritually activating, and you don't need to identify as a spiritual person to lean into this activating journey. It's just, it's out of your control. You, like I said, you're sitting there watching like a chick flick in the afternoon, and then you're just in blubbering mess. But there's a deep, inconsolable sadness to that, but there's also this beauty that like there's this rhythm to it that I've noticed, and there's this beauty and this lightness that comes afterwards when I'm just like grabbing a roll of toilet paper and like blowing my nose after just completely letting it all come out, you know? Excuse me. Oh, sorry. And I think sorry, I'm just like hiccuping and I've got all this stuff going on, but that is the grief journey for you. It's not pretty, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, hopefully you can just move through all the other sounds and just listen to this message, because this is for you. Anyone that's on a grief journey, I really, really understand how debilitating it is and how isolating it is. It's so scary, and there's so many people around you that are so compassionate and they love you so much, but unless they have lost a parent, they will not understand the absolute heartbreak that you're going through. So I hope that this podcast and this episode serves as a companion for you and a guide, and I just want it to feel like a warm hug. Like I'm just like, I see you, and I'm trying to hold you like energetically through these sound waves and come and give you a big cuddle wherever you are in the world. And I lost my dad when I was 31, so that's quite young. Like there's no one around me that had lost a parent when it happened, and there's still very few people that are around me that have lost a parent. So there were people around me that have gone through a grieving process, but like I said, losing a parent is just a whole other kettle of fish. Like I said, there's the grief of losing them, but then there's this like all of these invitations that come up to learn how to reparent yourself and to learn how to console that little girl or that little boy within you, that inner child that's within you. And it's like you've got this adult version of yourself now with this huge hole in your heart, and you've got to, and it's not that they're not, I truly believe that all of anyone that's passed away is still, their soul is still out there. It's just life force energy. It's universal energy. And I'll get into that in a bit. But so they're always there supporting you. But it's like, you've got to learn Earthside how to give yourself what your parents can't give you in this earthly realm anymore. They can still support you, like I said, with signs and love and in dreams and things like that, but there is an invitation to reparent yourself when you lose a parent. And I think when people haven't lost a parent yet, that's the key part that they don't realize. So I really understand the loneliness that goes on when you lose a parent. So I might just share how my dad passed away and the start of the grief journey, because I think sometimes just sharing your story is really is the medicine. And then we'll see how it flows. Like, I don't even though I've basically known I've needed to record this episode for like 2 years, as you can tell by the emotions that coming up, like I've never really directly told the story the whole way through. So it's going to be cathartic for me, and I really hope it's cathartic for you. And I don't want to say sorry that you're on this journey, because it's just part of life. At some point we're going to lose a parent, or maybe you will leave this earth, but basically death is inevitable. Losing a loved one and our death is inevitable. And sorry if I'm just coming in real hot with the morbid chat, but it's bound to happen. So I don't want to say sorry for your loss. I want to say I empathize with your loss. Like, I'm right beside you. I'm going through that journey, and it's just part of life, and it's one of the most beautiful initiations that there is, and you've never actually really lost them, you know? So yeah, all the sniffling and stuff. But I don't want to stop recording, so sorry. Okay, so also I had a really complicated relationship with my dad. He was a baby boomer, born in the 50s, 1953, I think. And so he died when he was 69. And my dad was a huge larrikin, super lighthearted. I definitely credit a lot of my humor to him, and he would have loved that he passed away at 69, to be honest with you. So he was a baby boomer and a man, obviously, and he had mental health issues, and he had something going on within his inner world, and he took whatever that trauma was, the story, whatever it was that was causing his depression or anxiety, he took that with him to the grave. We'll never actually know what was going on with him. And I just give a bit of a disclaimer for that, because I just love being alive in this day and age where it's not weak to speak, quotation marks, that saying, because I just really wonder if Dad was born in this time, would he have been able to sort of like soften that hard exterior that he had, and let us in and let us help him. He just he wouldn't let anyone in. So he, my mum told me actually the night that he passed away, we were staying in a motel, because I'll fill you on that part of the story, but Mum was actually telling me about how full of life he was. And I was actually looking at photos before I started this episode, because I just wanted to sort of get into that energy of this episode. And and he's like, he looks like he was the life of the party. He was like dancing on the dance floor all nights and having so much fun. And it's so wild to me that people describe him like that, because that was so different to the man that I met. I think having children has obviously triggered something in him, maybe just the sheer responsibility of having children. So a bit of a backstory. It's myself and my sister, who's 18 months younger than me, so I was born first. But again, we'll never know what the trigger was for Dad to sort of like, he just basically kept like very slowly but surely just kept hardening his exterior and making decisions that weren't the healthiest for him, which eventually led to him passing away. Like I said, I'll never know, but maybe having kids was, even though he loved us like unconditionally, like there was no doubt that he loved us, but it's like his trauma or whatever was going on in his inner world was too powerful for him to move through. Like I said, a baby boomer that wasn't really taught that men can be vulnerable and open up. And then maybe having kids and him realizing like, okay, I need to be a protector and a provider, but I'm inconsistent because I've got these mental health issues going on. So basically he pulled away and divorced my mum, or I don't know how it all went out, but basically he wasn't actively in my life for a large majority of it. And I've had to, since losing him, move through so much anger and move through a lot of forgiveness stuff. So yeah, he basically pulled away and went and created this whole new life without my sister and I in it. And I can't remember how it all went out, because like I think this was, I was like between like 3 and 4 when this happened. He separated from my mum, or divorced or whatever it was, and I kept showing up in his life. But I think even just being like a very sensitive, intuitive child, I could just feel that there was something going on behind the scenes with him. And as an adult, he, got worse and worse, and he basically would make a lot of lifestyle choices that didn't help him. So an alcoholic, was on a lot of pharmaceuticals, it was like a cocktail of pills. He's like, oh, I've got blood pressure, so I've got to take this, but then the blood pressure medication causes this, so I've got to take that. And he was just popping pills every day and drinking alcohol, smoking. He went and found a bunch of friends that basically didn't need to encourage him to be the best version of himself. And basically I remember a lot of my childhood I would spend at the pub with them or at the TAB, and I'm not jumping on here to slander my dead dad. But yeah, he made a lot of lifestyle choices that didn't support his longevity, basically. And as an adult, he was getting, more and more, I don't know, it was just really painful to be around him, basically, because I loved him so much and I saw the potential of him being the best dad ever and being the dad that I wanted, and he just continually made decisions that wouldn't take him in that direction. So by the time he passed away, we still had a really complicated relationship. And that doesn't mean, as you can tell at the start of the episode, that doesn't mean that I didn't love him any less. And that actually has probably made the grief more confusing and more intense, because you've got to grieve that potential. And by no means did I when he passed away, I'm like, oh no, like we didn't mend bridges. Like I am very committed to my personal evolution, and I was doing everything every day to be the best version of myself. But in my dad's case, it was one of those situations where it's like you can lead a horse to water, but they won't drink. And I had already found peace in, like, he will probably never tell us what's going on, or why he can't show up, or why his love for us, isn't winning over, what was going on. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I don't know if any of this is like relevant, but I'm just, like I said, I've never actually told this story to anyone around me, or let alone on a podcast where anyone in the world can listen. But so I might be rambling, but it's just me making sense of all of it, and I hope that it's beneficial to you guys listening. Basically I sort of had this inkling for a lot of my life that dad wouldn't be around forever because of all of these lifestyle decisions. Like, you can't just eat crap and, drink all the time and take all these pharmaceuticals and smoke cigarettes and then live to your 100. Well, some people can, but I don't know. I just had this intuitive feeling that he wouldn't be around for ages. And it's really scary. And before dad passed away, we actually had heaps of like near-death experiences. Well, basically, like, he would end up in hospital because of all these lifestyle decisions. And because I was the eldest and my parents were divorced, I was the next of kin. So I would get these calls while I was at university. Like, I was 19 or something at one point. I remember I was going into an anatomy exam with one of my science degrees. And the hospital called, like, hey, your dad's, you need to get his affairs in order. He's probably going to pass away. And I'm like, what the fuck? So we had a lot of like close calls, quotation marks. And it was really, really traumatizing. So when I got the call in 2022 that dad had ended up in hospital again, I can't remember if it was my mum or my sister called me, but he actually got diagnosed, weirdly enough, with leukemia, and that's a blood cancer. And until my dad got diagnosed with that, I actually thought it was like a child cancer, or maybe it's really common in children or something. But yeah, it was really left of field. But obviously, like I said, he's making all these shitty lifestyle decisions, like something was going to get him at one point. And it was just that same traumatizing cycle of like, okay, get his affairs in orders, come and see him and say goodbye. But I just knew in my bones, I was like, fuck, this is it. Like, he's not actually getting out. So basically all the other close calls that he had, like the doctor would be like, come and say goodbye. And I would. And then the next morning, the doctors would call up like, oh my God, he's made this miraculous recovery. How wonderful. And how traumatizing is that for a child? Just like, obviously it's great, but it's also like super traumatizing. So just a bit of a backstory of like, where sort of like it was like this anticipatory grief journey that I was always going on from basically. And I remember another birthday, I was still living at home, so in my teens, and Dad came over for my birthday and he ended up having to go to hospital because he was having heart pains. And I'm just like, you know, and you're compassionate about it, but you're scared. And then you're also like, fuck, Dad, like, can you just be a better dad, you know? So you can tell there's layers with this. Like, I love him so much, but then you're grieving the potential of like the life that we could have had with him being, you know, a better dad, basically. Like, sorry, Dad, but a better dad. And then I am just absolutely wired in my nervous system from all this anticipatory grief. And I'm like, I've basically had to go through this cycle of like anticipating him passing away and beginning that grieving process. And then getting a call like, he's fine. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's great. But like, oh my God. So that's just a bit of a context like of when I actually got to the point of Mum calling me in 2022 and being like, yeah, your dad's got leukemia. And mind you, this was during the pandemic or like the later end of the pandemic, but he actually had COVID as well. And because of that, got put into isolation. So he got told, yeah, he's got leukemia, but also got COVID. And I was living in Northern Rivers at that point, and he was living in Brisbane. So he's been put into some hospital in Brisbane, and my mum and my sister were there, and they got to see him, which was all well and good. Excuse me. And yeah, so and then we're getting more information as it comes in. And then I think Mum called me and she was like, oh, he's been given, I think it was 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. And, you know, my beautiful, amazing mum had to have the conversation with my dad because he was really confused as well. Like when you're so sick and you're like about to pass away, basically, you mentally sort of lose it. Like he was not really in this physical realm anymore. Now I'm reflecting on it. Like he was so confused. So he's sitting there in the hospital bed like, okay, sweet, well, when am I going home? And my beautiful mother had to have the conversation of like, Bruce, that was my dad's name. This is it. Like, you're not going home. Like this is, yeah, well, you'll be until you're not earthside anymore. And yeah, that would have just been such a heartbreaking conversation. I just have so much respect for my mum being able to do that. And then because of the COVID, my dad randomly got transferred to Warwick Hospital, which is 5 hours away from where I was living, because it's like, it was the closest infectious disease unit. And then like overnight we found out about that. And I remember my sister, I can't remember exactly where she was living, but she was driving to Brisbane, and then my dad calls and he's freaking out like, I'm getting moved. And it was on top of processing all of this, it was a really fucking traumatizing process. Thank you, Queensland Health. And yeah, so Dad's been relocated to Warwick, and I'm like, okay, sweet, I've got to go out there and see him. But mind you, at the time, we were told that, yeah, he would have 3 to 6 months. So I'm like, okay, sweet. Like, he's 5 hours away. I'll do this drive and go spend time with him like 1 day a week, because it's a 5-hour drive. So I'm sort of getting my life ready for like this very slow grieving process with Dad. Like, okay, well, he's got a few months to live. I'll, you know, prioritize as much as possible spending time with him before he passes away. And of course, I'm working. I've got to earn a living. Like, I can't just relocate out to Warwick. So for anyone that's gone through, it's not the grieving process, but is it anticipatory grief? It's really like life doesn't stop, and that's another traumatizing part. It's like we don't just get our bills paid because we've got our dad or your mum in hospital, or, you know, and you might have unexpectedly lost a parent if you're listening to this. And I really just want you to let you know that it's okay to not have been handling the responsibilities of being a human in this society while you're trying to navigate the gnarliest thing that's ever happened to you. Like, it's so fucked up. And I really hope at some point we get to become a community where we can have more bereavement support, because once you get to the other side and you're grieving them, you've also got, like, I was talking to my friend Serena about this the other day, and I think she's actually lost her dad, and I was giving her some support with that. And she was like, or I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I've processed the grief. And I was like, I think I think you're burnt out, because you're running around like getting your parents' affairs in order, and then you've also got to work, and then like, show up as a human being in this society. And it is the last fucking thing that you want to do. So we called it bereavement burnout. And I think as well, sometimes there is always a family member that sort of like has to take the lead in these areas. So I just want to let you know, if you've had to become that person, you are such a courageous warrior, because it is so much when you're already processing the emotional side of grief and bereavement. And then you've got to show up, and then on the other side of it, organize their funeral and their affairs and everything like that. Like, it is genuinely too much for one person and or one family to process. Like, I really hope as a community we move into a space where, or as a society, we move into a space where we can have this community approach to grief, because it is just too much. It is too much for the people that are dealing with heartbreak to do all of that admin stuff. It is so, so wild. So I just want to let you know, if you've navigated that, just give yourself permission to be compassionate with yourself, because that is not a normal thing to do. It's not something that we should have to handle all by ourselves or as one family. And if you have had the opportunity to have wider support, fuck yeah. Sorry for swearing, but that's really, really great, because in our situation, it wasn't that much support, and it's wild. So I see you and I feel you, and you need to give yourself a pat on the back if you've had to go through something similar. So back to my story. I'm driving out to Warwick, the 5-hour drive, and thinking like, okay, this is the first of like however many, but that's all good. I'll, spend time with Dad. And I pull up at Warwick Hospital, and it's so horrible. It's so fucking horrible, because it's like, you haven't gone through losing them yet, but and it's so scary. And I can't comment on if you have lost someone unexpectedly. That is a whole other level of traumatizing as well. But it's so scary, because in your body and like intuitively, that it's coming to an end. Like, there's something really big about to happen, which is, losing a loved one. So, pulled up to Warwick Hospital. It's like this gnarly country style hospital, and you're just like sitting in the waiting room, and even just the lighting and everything, and you're just like, oh my God, this is out of a fucking horror story. Like, it is so wild. And you're just sitting there thinking like, you just want to wake up from a bad dream, basically. And I actually had my first few panic attacks when I was going through this grieving process, because I would be lying there like trying to go to sleep, and you'd realize like, okay, Dad's got leukemia, he's got this long to live, sort of thing. And then you sort of try and wake yourself up like, oh, no, this is just a bad dream. And I remember I would think like, oh my God, no, like it's actually reality. And I would just wake up and I could not breathe, and it was so scary. Like, it's so scary going through this. So yeah, and I just think you need to have so much love and compassion for yourself when you go through this, because it's one of the biggest initiations that you'll ever go through. Oh, so yeah, I'm in Warwick Hospital, and like I said, I just wanted to like shake the doctors and the lighting, like, shake their shoulders like, oh, shut up, you know what I mean? Like, and just the lighting and everything. And I remember I walked in, and I saw my dad, and his skin was like grey. Like, he just did not look like he was going to be earthside for much longer. And it sucks so much. And he was asleep at the time, which was really nice, because I went in and I was so emotional, obviously, because you never want to see your loved one like that, So it's a personal choice what you want to do. Obviously you want to spend as much time with them when they pass away, but I just mean that it's a personal choice if you have the opportunity to see your loved one's body when they've passed away, like if it's a viewing at the morgue or whatever. But oh God, in my personal experience, it was really traumatizing, even just seeing him sort of on his last legs, and yeah, thankfully he was asleep, so I had a moment to like process the shock, and I just sat there at the end of the bed. And he woke up, and we were just like making eye contact, and oh man, like, you just, when you both know, like, oh yeah, shit, this is it. And 5-hour drive, it's massive. So I'm already sort of processing, like, you have to try and say to the best of your ability everything that you want to say to this man, like your dad, like the person that is your first protector and is meant to be that it's your first relationship with masculine energy, and we all have feminine and masculine energy, but like traditionally, like men sort of step into their masculine energy in a more dominant way, and your dad is meant to be like your first experience with masculine energy. And then if you've lost a mum, your mum is like your birth portal. Like they birthed you into this world. Like there's such a deep connection with your parents, because they are your first providers, and they're literally the spiritual, energetic, and biological fucking reason that you're on this planet. So when they leave this planet, fuck yeah, it's so traumatizing. It's so wild. But I just hope listening to this podcast is just like helping you guys transmute something. I don't know. Like I said, there's no how to with grief, but just sitting in the emotion of it is the processing. I think that is the how to, you know? So I'm sitting here at the end of the hospital bed looking at this man that's meant to have been my greatest protector and my biggest provider, and he wasn't, and that's fine. I've moved through all of that, but it still doesn't mean that you just have this like insane spiritual connection to them. So I am lucky enough on my grief journey that I did have an opportunity to say goodbye to him. And unfortunately, he was really hopped up on morphine, because when you are in so much pain and he's like, you know, got a really late stage leukemia, they've like hopped him up on morphine. And it was really traumatizing, because he would be telling a story and then all of a sudden he would get a bit lost and start telling another story. And I know it wasn't you know, like I said, I think it's one, either the morphine, but then two, like they're not really all here anymore. Like they're sort of already leaving Earthside, and that's why they get so confused. And so that was really hard. And anyone that's listening that's lost a parent to like Alzheimer's or dementia or something, oh my God, my hat goes off to you guys, because, you know, it's a lesser of two evils, I suppose. Like if you lose them to something physical, which I know these, you know, dementia and Alzheimer's do have physical symptoms as well, but like when they mentally aren't there anymore, like that is so traumatizing as well. So yeah, and Dad was, obviously really tired and all of that stuff. So we had a little bit of a chat here and there, but like I said, nothing was really making sense. And then he was sort of like, I can't remember if I initiated it or he was like, oh, I need to sort of like have another nap now. But it was time for me to go, and it wasn't even an hour I spent with him. And I remember at the time I was like, yeah, okay, you'll come back next. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, all right, I'll come once a week. But, you know, with all the, you know, my life that's going on, I can't come more than that, or I can't stay in work. I can't afford 2 rents, you know what I mean? And I was like, I'll come back next week and we'll bring you some books and stuff like that. And I just knew that we were both humoring us, you know what I mean? And a part of me was like, you know, saying goodbye to him. And I was like, no, just say all the things you need to say next week. And I was just like, nah, you need to say it now. And it wasn't as many words as I wanted to say, but I just grabbed his hand and was just like, I wanted to say sorry, because obviously we'd had a complicated relationship because of his mental health issues. And you might be sitting here like, wow, you fucking bitch. Like you know, he was having mental health issues and you didn't show up in his life. But like, you know, I don't know, I don't need to explain that journey to you, but to the best of my ability, I tried to be a part of his life, but it was like at a huge detriment to me, and I had to choose me. And I know that he doesn't you know, question that decision, because he made it so hard for me to be a part of his life, and I really wanted to be, but it was so hard. You know, there wasn't very many boundaries, and there was just a lot of stuff that went on, and that's not the reason I jumped on here. But, so I said sorry, and he's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, I forgive you. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then I was like, I love you. And, sorry, I'm blubbering through this, but hopefully, hopefully this is still helpful. Oh, wild. So wild. But yeah, I grabbed his hand, and, you know, you think you're going to say more words, but then in that moment, like, you don't need words. Like, it's sort of, just this energetic exchange. And because he was really weak, he didn't have many words to say, but they're just like, with the few words that we said to each other, it was enough, you know. And I walked out and I was just like having this out of body experience. It was so wild. I started the 5-hour drive back to Northern Rivers, and then I got a call. Again, like the details are blurry, because just when I think like your mind, it's sort of like, you know, how when you give birth and then like your brain makes you forget how much pain it was, so you have another baby sort of thing. I think it was like that, because I can't remember who called me, but basically, like, very, very soon, like within half an hour of me leaving, my dad went unconscious and he didn't regain consciousness. And, you know, and a lot of these stories where it's, you know, their last moments here on earth, they will often wait to say goodbye to their loved ones. And, you know, my very small family all agreed that Dad was holding on just for me to get out there and say goodbye. Hold on, I just have to sort of blow my nose, but I don't want to do it like fully in your faces. Again, like I said, I'm so sorry for all the bodily noises, but I just really hope that this is some form of helpful for everyone else listening. But yeah, they do say that when your loved one is on their last moments on earth, that they will hold on to say goodbye to their loved ones. And my mum, my sister and I all agreed that he was holding on to say goodbye to me, because my mum and my sister had seen him in Brisbane. And then I got out to Warwick, and I think my sister went that night, but he was unconscious but didn't wake back up again. So yeah, it was really a really cathartic, wild, and it was such a numb experience too. Hold on. Oh, sorry. So much coming up, like literally in my body as well. So I'm so sorry if you're hearing all the noises. Yeah, it's just so wild, and I'm sorry it literally probably just took me 20 minutes to get to that point, but I just really wanted to lay out what the grief journey is like pre-grief and anticipatory grief, because that journey, like, you're already so fatigued from the anticipation of losing your loved one. And like I said, for me, it was quite a long journey, because my dad basically spent 3/4 of my life making decisions that I call, like, it was like a slow suicide. Like, he had just completely checked out on himself, because he had mental health issues, and he was like I said, like, we always tried to get him to, like, you know, move through it and live a better life and be happy and stuff like that. And he just wouldn't. So I had this like wild experience of this really long anticipatory grief. And then it was this really quick grief. So from when Dad got diagnosed with that leukemia and I got that phone call to when he passed away, like I met him that afternoon in Warwick, it was 6 days. And it's so wild, because I had both of the griefs. Like, I had the anticipatory griefs. Like, I had the really long 15-year fucking circling the drain experience of him being in and out of hospital and stuff, and then I had the shock of losing him so quickly. And like I said, I can't comment on what it's like to, you know, if you've lost a parent to a, you know, shocking, a shock car accident or whatever it was, that is a whole kettle of fish as well. And I'm so eternally grateful that I got to say goodbye. And if you're someone who has lost a parent unexpectedly and you feel like you didn't get to say goodbye, you have the opportunity in every moment to say goodbye, because I can, in this experience of being on the other side of losing Dad and now grieving him for the last 2 years, I've been able to connect with his spirit, and I 100% know that he's with me every day and he's listening to me, and I've had conversations with him. And so if you've lost a parent and you feel like you didn't get to say goodbye while they were earthside, you can always talk to them now. I really, really believe that you can talk to them now and get your closure through, whether you need to write a letter or speak out loud or meet them in your dreams. They'll come and visit you in your dreams. If you've dreamt about your parent that's passed away, that's their spirit visiting you, you know? Oh, sorry, I just sort of went off on a weird tangent. This is one of the longest podcasts I've recorded, but I hope that it's been beneficial, and I hope that you guys are, getting some companionship and some medicine from it. So, and then I've had this like wild journey with anticipatory grief, and with anyone that's lost a parent, you know what that's like. And then you get the grief journey. So, and you're already so burnt out. You're so emotionally at capacity by the time that they pass away, and then they pass away, and then you're like, oh, cool, like how terrifying. One of the worst things that can happen to you as a human has happened, and you've got to like keep on keeping on, and now you've got to like figure out your life without them in it, you know? It's so wild. It's such a wild experience. So like I said, I got the call that Dad had gone unconscious. My sister went and met him, and said her goodbyes, and he was unconscious. But like I said, I believe that he was listening and received all of that information. And then, I just spent that night. I think I can't, again, like it's a blur. I think my grief has blocked it out just for the sake of managing and coping. And, I can't remember what I did that afternoon and that night, but I just remember lying there one night. Oh, I was watching, my partner at the time had gone to sleep, and I couldn't sleep. I was like, there's no way I can just be here with my thoughts, you know? And I remember I was watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I just needed to like watch something enjoyable, I guess, and like distract myself. And then I finished watching that, and I like just closed the laptop and was trying to drift off to sleep. And then I got the fucking phone call, and it was my mum, so that was nice. At least it wasn't like a random doctor or nurse, but she was like, yeah, hun, he's passed away. And I was like, yeah, okay. And it is so wild. Like, it's actually a bit of like an anticlimax. I don't know. Well, my experience was, or maybe I just went numb like straight away, but it was like, I've had this anticipation for like 3/4 of my life that my dad would, leave Earthside quite early on in my life. And then he does, and you're like, oh, yep. And I got off the phone to Mum, and I don't even think I cried straight away, to be honest with you. I was just like, okay, that's that. And then I told my partner, and he offered me, some condolences or whatever. And then I just really have so much compassion for anyone that has, obviously, like, that has dealt with grief, because you don't actually get a chance to really process it straight away. And because as soon as they passed away, it's like crunch time. I had to get back out to work. I had to organize. Well, my sister, like all of us were doing this. I wasn't doing it by myself, but it really is like a time game. And we had to get Dad's body organized off to get cremated, organizing the wake, telling all the family members and everything. And you go straight into fight or flight, basically. Like, you don't get a chance to fall apart. It was really, really wild. So my mum and I met back out in Warwick and did all of those things. And then and it's fucking Warwick, and we had to like book into this random motel, and it was just such a sad place, and it was just so soul sucking. And I remember that night we were just sitting on the beds, like we had the TV on in the background, and I think we bought some nibbles and were having some wines, and Mum was sharing all these stories about Dad and how happy he was in his earlier years. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know this man, and you're just like so in shock. Well, that was my first experience, and then we had like a wake like sort of thing for Dad. I wouldn't call it like, I don't know what you call them, but we all met up and celebrated Dad, basically. And that's really beautiful, but that was also so emotionally taxing, because like being the daughter, and obviously my sister and I are there, being the daughter of someone that's passed away. Thankfully, every loved one in my dad's life came and said, great stories about him. And I had to make up like a PowerPoint, presentation, all these photos of him and everything. And that like double, triple, quadruples down the intensity of your grief journey. But it's so beautiful. But I'm just saying, like, if you feel like you're at capacity on that journey, that's totally okay, because it is wild. Like, you go into this, it's like this wild time where you're trying to process the biggest thing that's ever happened, but it's all happening so quickly. And you basically, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you've had to go into fight or flight and numb yourself and you go into shock first, that is completely human and normal. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, or you don't love them, or you're not processing anything properly. Like I said, there's no how-to guide with grief. It is just doing the best that you can in every single moment, you know? This has actually been such a long episode. I think I want to do a second episode on the whole process of reparenting yourself, because that is, like I said, I'm only like 2 days into losing dad at this point, and there's so much else that went on after that. So yeah, as you can probably relate, the whole wake funeral journey is really wild and it's so beautiful, but you're sort of like, you're just holding on to be able to fall apart. I don't know if you can relate to that, but it's so wild. So yeah, basically the early stages of grief, if you are, if you're still processing what you went through back then, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is just be so compassionate for that version of yourself, because as you can probably relate, it's just like you don't have a moment to stand still. And even if you have an entire village of people helping you, you are still in shock and you're still numb. And that's just your body's way of trying to protect you, because like I said, it's one of the gnarliest things that's ever happens to you in your life is the grief journey, and especially losing a parent, because there's the whole inner child reparenting journey, which I'll do a separate podcast on. But of course your body is going to go into shock, because it's like, it's trying to protect you. So if you are, I don't know where you're at in your grief journey while you're listening to this episode, but just have so much compassion for yourself and just know that your mind, body, and soul know what's best, and they are guiding you at all times to navigate the grief journey. And everyone's grief journey is super duper unique. And I think the biggest piece of information that I want to give you guys right now is, you have to have compassion for yourself on the journey, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And I am really proud of myself on my journey at the start of like not trying to dictate what the journey was going to look like. And there was some days where I didn't get out of bed. There was some days where I just didn't care. And I'm a very health conscious person, but there was just some days I didn't care about what I ate, or I hardly ate, because I was mourning. I was in so much physical fucking pain that I would just stay in bed and eat a little bit of chocolate and maybe I kept watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know. But I just want you to know that it's okay if there's days where nothing helps you, because nothing will help you. It has to be absolutely heartbreaking. It has to pull you into the deepest abyss of sorrow and heartbreak. And that's where the initiation is. And you know what the beautiful part is? The fact that you are able to grieve that deeply is an indication of how deeply you can love and how deeply you love that person. And even like I said, I had such a complicated relationship with my dad, but the grieving journey has been one of the most intense emotional journeys I've ever had, because that is how deeply I loved him. And I had to go through a whole forgiveness journey as well. And it is so wild. So yeah, it's okay if there's days where you don't feel like you, quotation marks, performed as the greatest human being, you know? I had days where I would walk along the beach and I wasn't suicidal, but I just didn't want to be here, if that makes sense. And I would just walk along and it was like this numbness, like the numbness was so disorientating. I just like walk and I just like look up at the sky and I was like, it's okay. I would be okay with not being here anymore. And like there was I hope that makes sense. Like if you've been there, it's not suicidal tendencies. It's just like you completely implode into this black hole. So you don't even feel like you're on Earth. So that's why those thoughts come up and you're like, I'm not even here. And you're not. You're not actually here. And that's okay as well. I'm just drilling home this point of like, whatever is coming up on your grieving journey, it's so perfect. If there's days where you cry yourself to the point where you want to vomit or you might even vomit, that's okay. You just need to keep showing up every single moment to moment for that grief, because it is, like I said, it's the biggest indication of how deeply you can love. And what a celebration that we as human beings can grieve with this intensity, because it shows how deeply and beautifully we love. Like there is so much beauty in the grieving process. And I really hope that at least this podcast has helped you feel like you're not so lost in this journey, because I remember when I was in my journey and the grief is like smoke and mirrors, and it's like there's a wild storm at sea and you're in like a little life raft and you've got a blindfold on and you're trying to make sense of it, and everyone's sort of like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, etc. But then remember when I mentioned there's like the 5-meter thick piece of glass around you like this whole time, and you're like, nothing can get in. So I hope that this podcast episode has really helped sort of penetrate that journey for you and making you not feel so alone on this journey, because I've been through it. And I don't think, like I said, there's other people that are familiar with the grieving journey, but when you lose a parent, it's like a whole nother kettle of fish. So I think I'm going to wrap up this episode, but I've already sort of got like 2 more parts that I want to record. So if you have gained any value from this podcast episode, please reach out to me and let me know, because I would love to know if this is something you want me to keep shining a light on. Like I said, I want to do another episode on the reparenting process. So when you sort of get through the initial layers of grief, then invitations sort of come up to learn how to reparent yourself, and it's like the later stages of grief, you know what I mean? And I can touch on like the firsts of everything, so like the first birthday of theirs or the first Christmas without them and all of that sort of stuff. And then I think I also want to do another episode on what a soul is, what my beliefs of the afterlife are, what my beliefs of how to communicate with our loved ones in once they're not earthside, because that's been a really cathartic and healing journey for me too. So yeah, and by the way, I just want to let you know that I've had this photo of me, like, I don't know, I'm 7 weeks old. I just looked at the back of the photo, but I've had this photo next to me the whole time I've been recording this episode, and it's me at 7 weeks old and my dad's holding me. And yeah, I just wanted to have this here by my side to just sort of like speak to that, just speak to that love. Speaking of like signs from your loved ones, like I said, my friend Esther messaged me today, basically saying like, if you don't already have an episode about this, do you want to record one? Like, I think this would help people. And I was driving, I had to go and do something else for another income related thing. And I was driving there today, and my one of my favorite number synchronicities is 888. And I'm driving along thinking about, what would I even say? And I love how I've spoken for like 56 minutes. And I'm like, I don't even know what I would talk about. So I'm sitting there thinking on this drive, and I'm like, what would I talk about? And then a car drives past me with a number plate 888. And I'm like, my favorite number synchronicity. And then I look at a bumper sticker that's on that car, and a sign that I've like a mutual sign that I have created with my dad to show as a sign to show me that he's with me is anything Brisbane Lions memorabilia, because Brisbane Lions are an AFL team here in Australia, and he was a diehard fan, and we grew up on AFL, and I'm also a diehard AFL fan. AFL fan, but also a Brizzy Lions fan. And there was a freaking bumper sticker on this car with the number plate AAA, which is my number. There's a bumper sticker that's the Brisbane Lions number sticker, and then bumper sticker, and on the bumper sticker it said brave and bold. And I just feel like it was my dad being like, you're brave and bold about even thinking about recording this podcast, and it was such a beautiful sign. And I maybe want to record another podcast episode on how you can develop this language with them, because I just been so therapeutic and healing for me to really lean into that understanding that, yes, my dad isn't earthside anymore, but he's still very much alive, and he's very much with me, and he's very, very much loves me. And I think that's actually the final note. I keep wanting to wrap up this podcast and I keep talking, but I think that's the final note, point that I want to make, is that your mum or dad, your parent that you have lost, they love you so much. Their love for you does not die because they have passed away. If there is one thing you take from this episode, please, please know that you were the pride and joy of their existence on this planet. And because of that love, that is why the grief is so hard, because you are so genuinely loved by your parent. They were absolutely lit up by their love for you, and they still are, you know? So thank you for tuning in. Reach out to me as well if you need some support on your grief journey, because like I said, it's not fun doing it alone. And I hope this podcast has served as a sort of companion or a guide for your journey. But if you need some more support, let me know. And then let me know if you want those other 2 episodes, because that's sort of what's coming to fruition in my mind, is like breaking this up a little bit, because this is a long ep, but maybe we just needed to sit in the grief for an hour, you know? Like, I think it's really therapeutic. I'm feeling very physically exhausted, but also very, very light. Like I said, recording this episode has been like 2 years in the making for me, and I'm really glad that I was able to directly sort of relive that journey of like the anticipatory grief and then the early stages of the grief, because it's been too hard to look at. And now I've looked at it, I feel like I've processed a bit more of it. So thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I love you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode. Hey, beautiful soul. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Oasis State podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend. It means the world to me knowing that everyone who needs this medicine and magic can lovingly receive it. Also, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out via social media, my website, or email. Can't wait to connect, and until then, sending you heaps of love.